Hello and welcome to the David Icke Videocast. Well, I've been warning for a long time about the ever-gathering concentration of power in the world over what we see and don't see. I've highlighted the power structure out of Silicon Valley involving Facebook and Google and YouTube. You can throw in Amazon as well, which may not be physically located in Silicon Valley, but its spiritual home is there. And these handful of corporations, run by a handful of people, have gathered extraordinary concentrations of power over what people are allowed to see and not see. And we can add another name to that, which is what I want to talk about today, which is Wikipedia. Now, Wikipedia is supposed to be the people's encyclopedia, where people all over the world in very, very large numbers go to get their information, thus their perceptions about people, history, world events, vaccinations, almost any subject you can imagine. And the truth is that it's not the people's encyclopedia. It is written and edited by a ridiculously few people, and we don't know who they are because they hide behind pseudonyms and login names. And when I use the phrase Wikipedia, manipulating your mind, what does control of information do? It manipulates perception. Perception of people, perception of events, perception of everything. And therefore, if you can emphasize some information and suppress or discredit alternative information to that, then you can influence and manipulate the public's perception of reality. And from perception comes everything. Comes behavior, becomes what you will challenge, what you will not challenge, how you will respond to something, how you won't. Everything comes from perception, and perception comes from information. Everything from a personal experience to reading Wikipedia. And we are told that Wikipedia is written and edited by its readers. But it turns out that that's actually not the case. And when you have inaccuracies published about you on Wikipedia, the ability to get those changed or deleted is very, very difficult indeed, nearing on the impossible. And I have my own experience of this. I mean, my Wikipedia page, which obviously I have no control over, has many, many inaccuracies of fact. And it leads people to believe, for instance, that I am some kind of racist, don't have a racist cell in my body, and a Holocaust denier. And my son Gareth this week wrote to Wikipedia and said, I have several times removed the claim that my father David Icke has denied the Holocaust. He does not deny anything of the sort. A Wikipedia editor in Israel, which will therefore be unbiased against someone like me who's challenging the far-right apartheid racist Netanyahu regime in Israel, continues to edit that into my father's Wikipedia page, as well as claiming he is anti-Semitic. He is not, never has been. All racism is juvenile, childlike nonsense. I find it disgusting, Gareth said, that people are allowed to write libelous content on your website without any repercussions. And whenever it was taken down, it was back literally in minutes. So someone was keeping a watch on it. And what came back was an absolute bullshit, obviously a common standard reply to such questions, which showed with its endless links, go here, go there, go here, what a complete dog's breakfast it is, and what a complex matter it is to try to get things that are not true taken down from a Wikipedia page, not just mine, anybody's. And Gareth's reply to this standard bullshit was, let me get this right. So even though what is being said is libelous, there is nothing I can do about it. The libelous material has once again been returned to the page, and I have been given a final warning for removing it. And he concludes, what happens if I went to, say, Bruce Forsyth's page, Bruce Forsyth, for people around the world, a very famous British entertainer, and said he blew up goats for a laugh? Would his family be given a final warning for removing that? This is the nonsense that we're dealing with this source of information, Wikipedia, from which so many people worldwide get their, quote, information, thus perceptions, about people and the world in general. And they have this little technique. It's called critics say. Of course, anyone with any kind of profile is going to have critics. It's the way of the world. But what critics say cannot necessarily be factually justified. But that doesn't matter, because this phrase, critics say, can be followed by anything you bloody like in an effort to discredit somebody. It doesn't have to be true, but critics say. And in terms of what happened in Nazi Germany, I say again, the way the Jewish people in Nazi Germany were treated by the Nazis is grotesque, horrific, and almost beyond the imagination. And the way they treated other people too, who tend to be forgotten in Germany, the same goes for them. And it's ironic that in the same Wikipedia page, in which it's indicated that I'm some kind of anti-Jewish person and you know, in some way have sympathy with the Nazis and what happened in Nazi Germany. If not said outright, then underlying implication. In the same Wikipedia page, it points out that I've been warning all these years about the planned global fascist state. Fascism is something that I've been highlighting, warning about, and railing against for 30 years, even longer before that, but particularly for the last 30 years. But none of this seems to matter, because Wikipedia is a law unto itself. Now, some Wikipedia numbers. It's claimed that 5.65 million articles are on Wikipedia, increasing at a rate of about 1,500 every day. It has 18 billion average monthly page views, and is in 280 languages. Now, here's the point. percentage of Wikipedia active editors who are dictating there what you see and what you don't see, 0.5%. And yet we're still told that Wikipedia is the people's encyclopedia that is written and edited by its readers. And if you go deeper into this, you find that a small percentage of the 0.5% are actually in control ultimately, and they are called administrators. They're the ones with the real power to decide what goes on Wikipedia pages and what doesn't. And these editors, in all their forms, are anonymous, hiding behind their pseudonyms and their login names, and many clearly have political and personal agendas that they are pushing, and because of the anonymity can do so without the public knowing the background to who they are and what those agendas are. And the whole system is clearly absolutely open to manipulation and corruption and to misrepresenting people and events, because there is a common theme through the vast majority of Wikipedia, and that is an emphasis on the accuracy of official stories and official narratives, and an emphasis on discrediting or undermining those which challenge those official narratives. I'm sure people who watch these videos every week will not be in the least bit surprised about that. Let me give you a quote from Larry Sanger, who was a co-founder of Wikipedia. Then he left, co-founder with still its godfather, a bloke called Jimmy Wales. And Larry Sanger, after he left the company, said, "People that I would say are trolls sort of took over. The inmates started running the asylum." And from what I can see, in many cases, they still are. So let's have a look at one example, because people are now starting to research this and look deeper into the background of Wikipedia, because, of course, it has such an influence on the perceptions of reality of all those people that go there for their information, that it deserves to be researched and its methods of operation uncovered. And one person who's done this with an article headed "The Philip Cross Affair" is Craig Murray, former British ambassador. And let me read you what he says about this Philip Cross and Wikipedia. "Philip Cross has not had one single day off from editing Wikipedia in almost 5 years. He, in quotes, has edited every single page from the 29th of August 2013, or every single day rather, from 29th of August 2013 to the 14th of May 2018. including 5 Christmas days, and that's 1,721 consecutive days of editing. 133,612 edits to Wikipedia have been made, Murray says, in the name of Philip Cross over 14 years. That's over 30 edits per day, 7 days a week, and I do not use that figuratively. He says Wikipedia edits are timed, and if you plot them, the time card for Philip Cross's Wikipedia activity is astonishing if it is one individual. The operation, Murray says, runs like clockwork, 7 days a week, every waking hour, without significant variation. If Philip Cross genuinely is an individual, there's no denying he is morbidly obsessed. I am no psychiatrist, Murray says, but to my entirely inexpert eyes, this looks like the behavior of a deranged psychotic with no regular social activities outside his home, no job, or an incredibly tolerant boss, living his life through a screen. And Murray says there are three options here. Philip Cross is either a very strange person indeed, or is a false persona disguising a paid operation to control Wikipedia content, or is a real front person for such an operation in his name. Why does this, Murray asks, to take the official explanation, sad, obsessive, no friends nutter matter? Because the purpose of the Philip Cross operation is to systematically attack and undermine the reputations of those who are prominent in challenging the dominant corporate and state media narrative, particularly in foreign affairs. And that is why this Wikipedia operation has to be looked at very, very closely in terms of its impact on perception and the fact or bias that it uses to decide what is published and what isn't. Simply put, the purpose of the Philip Cross operation is to make certain that if the reader looks up an anti-war person such as John Pilger, they will conclude they are thoroughly unreliable and untrustworthy, whereas if they look up a right-wing mainstream media journalist, they will conclude they are the paragon of virtue and entirely to be trusted. And he points out that these Philip Cross edits also systematically seek to burnish the reputations of mainstream media journalists and other figures who are particularly prominent in pushing neocon propaganda, i.e. all those wars in the Middle East and goodness knows what else, and in promoting the interests of Israel. And this Israel theme can be followed throughout this concentration of power among the internet giants, as I'll come to. But the point is that, I see people of the right complaining that Wikipedia is misrepresenting them because they are anti-right. And I see people of the left saying that Wikipedia is misrepresenting them because they are of the left. But the truth is not left or right. Get out of that. It's who is challenging the official narrative and who isn't. That would appear to be the criteria of what is promoted and what is sought to be undermined. And indeed, Craig Murray points this out in his article. He says the Philip Cross treatment is meted out not just to left-wingers, but to all skeptical of neoconservatism and who oppose wars of intervention. This is a theme which says much about the motivations of those that control Wikipedia. Murray goes on, just as revealing are the people who Philip Cross seeks to protect and promote. Sarah Smith, BBC Scotland's Uber unionist, has had Philip Cross kindly delete references from her Wikipedia entry to family ties that may have helped her career, Murray says. Labour Friends of Israel's Ruth Smith, MP, has had a reference to the WikiLeaks released US diplomatic cable that showed she was an informer to the US Embassy on the secrets of the Labour Party, deleted by Philip Cross. Philip Cross, he goes on, also supports those people that are promoting this official narrative. And he says, what is particularly interesting is that Philip Cross's views happen to be precisely the same views of those of Jimmy Wales, the founder of Wikipedia. And like I say, still the major power within it, whatever they may say. Jimmy Wales has been on Twitter in the last 3 days, Murray says, being actively rude and unpleasant to anybody questioning the activities of Philip Cross. His commitment to Cross's freedom to operate on Wikipedia would be rather more impressive, he says, if the Cross operation were not promoting Wales's own opinions. Jimmy Wales has actively spoken against Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour Party opposition leader, supports the bombing of Syria, supports Israel, big time, and is so much of a Tony Blair supporter, what they call Blairites, that he married Blair's secretary and sits on the board of the Guardian Media Group Limited alongside Catherine Viner. And if you look at what happened to the Daily Mail, a major British newspaper, as a result of Wikipedia anonymous editors. People might say, well, it's the Daily Mail. Who cares about the Daily Mail? It's a right-wing rag. And I have fundamental disagreements with much of what the Daily Mail stands for. But here's a quaint thought. Here's a quaint concept. Isn't freedom about the freedom of everybody? Isn't one definition of freedom the freedom of those you disagree with to have the same rights as you? Which is ironic because the Daily Mail is always going on about freedom, but he doesn't want freedom for everyone. He wants freedom for itself. But some of us actually hold on to that quaint concept of freedom for everybody. And for me, if anyone does not have freedom of expression, then no one does, because everyone else is just left to conform, not to freely express. Anyway, the Daily Mail was banned by Wikipedia as an information source in February 2017. And when the paper investigated why this happened, they found facts that were both, as I say in my last book, both pathetic and chilling. A handful of people with an anti-press and in some cases seriously anti-Daily Mail agenda had simply got together within Wikipedia and decided to ban the Mail while producing no evidential justification for that whatsoever. One of them, the Mail revealed, goes by the anonymous tags Hillbilly Holiday and Tabloid Terminator, which kind of sounds very balanced and unbiased, and has apparently been pictured, this editor, with a burning copy of the Mail. And Wales announced, Jimmy Wales, the Wikipedia godfather, without an hint of irony in 2017, that he was launching a new website called Wiki Tribune to produce, quote, fact-checked global news stories to overcome fake news. He said, quote, I find myself being a bit upset that people are making decisions based on lies, false information, and so on, and so I want to add a new trusted information source to all the others out there, he said, all the others in the mainstream. Well, apart from the Daily Mail, it seems. So the hypocrisy of that is stunning, given the way Wikipedia operates anonymously in deciding what people see and don't see, and what most people who go to Wikipedia will take as being factual when it's not. This is another quote from Jimmy Wales. Google must not be left to censor history. I mean, did I really say? I did. The power to censor history should not be left in Google's hands. No, it shouldn't, nor Wikipedia's. Wikipedia founder Jimmy Wales warned after the search engine giant revealed it had approved over 90,000 so-called right-to-be-forgotten requests. Wales said that a European court ruling allowing people to have links scrubbed from the search engine's index was open-ended. He further slammed the law for being unclear. And on that, he is correct. People's true history should not be deleted so that people can't see it. If it's true and it happened, well, people should be able to know that, particularly for people in the public arena. But it is also true that alleged factual articles, biographies, and background information about everything published on Wikipedia should also be factual and should also be open to being changed without all this bureaucratic nonsense when it can be shown to be inaccurate. One law for one and another law for another is not freedom, and it's certainly not the free flow of information. Anyway, there's a website called Wikipediocracy, which is worth going to because it concentrates on uncovering and exposing the background to Wikipedia. And that and other studies have concluded the following. Wikipedia contains incorrect, misleading, and biased information. I know. Wikipedia's articles are used to spread gossip, abet character assassination, and invade the privacy of the general public. Wikipedia overemphasizes popular culture and underemphasizes scholarly disciplines, like dealing in facts and only facts. Wikipedia violates copyrights, plagiarizes the work of others, and denies attribution to contributions. Wikipedia, frequently searched and prominently positioned among results, spreads misinformation, defamation, and bias far beyond its own site. Wikipedia disrespects and disregards scholars, experts, scientists, and others with special knowledge. Wikipedia's culture of anonymous editing and administration results in a lack of responsible authorship and management. I know. Wikipedia's administrators have become an entrenched and overpowerful elite, unresponsive and harmful to authors and contributors. Wikipedia's numerous policies and procedures are not enforced equally on the community. Popular or powerful editors are often exempted. Wikipedia's quasi-judicial body, the Arbitration Committee, or ARBCOM, is at best incompetent and at worst corrupt. And finally, the Wikimedia Foundation, the organization legally responsible for Wikipedia, is opaque, is poorly managed, and is insufficiently independent from Wikipedia's remaining founder, Jimmy Wales, and his business interests. Now, given all that, I would say you might be surprised, you probably won't if you watch these videos every week, to find that Wikipedia is being used as an arbiter of what is factual and what isn't by other internet giants like YouTube. Here's this article, YouTube to start correcting controversial videos with, quote, facts. See what I've said so far. from discredited Wikipedia pages run by disinfo trolls. In the latest assault on the freedom to think for yourself, YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki has announced that YouTube will begin correcting controversial videos with facts from Wikipedia, an utterly discredited disinfo propaganda website run by big pharma trolls who routinely demonize holistic medicine. Quote, Jimmy Wales and his army of liberal trolls. But again, forget the liberal, forget the conservative. It's that which challenges the official narrative, whatever political direction you're coming from. Jimmy Wales and his army of trolls will determine what's truth, and anything which goes too far in countering the narrative will be banned or censored, warns Information Liberation. Now, YouTube CEO Wojcicki believes that video content creators who dare mention conspiracy topics such as mercury in vaccines, chemtrails, or the globalist depopulation agenda must be corrected with Wikipedia propaganda. The thought police are hard at work at YouTube, banning or censoring all videos they don't want to see, and they are. So many YouTube channels that have been challenging the official narrative in whatever subject area are disappearing. They're just being deleted. So the other part of this is that YouTube and Facebook and Google, etc., are also employing ultra-Zionist, what I would call hate groups, to advise them on what is censored and what isn't. Oh, dropping me glasses. So, Jonathan Taplin revealed the scale of the domination of information by Silicon Valley and these internet giants in his book, Move Fast and Break Things, How Facebook, Google, and Amazon Cornered Culture and Undermined Democracy. And he points out that the world's 5 highest valued companies are Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and Facebook, which have secured monumental levels of market domination. And in terms of this whole information control, you can throw Wikipedia in there as well. The potential this has for dictating what we see and don't see is clearly phenomenal, fundamental, and extremely sinister. Taplin points out that they monetize the lives of the global population and exploit their creativity while paying them nothing or a pittance in return compared with the amazing wealth they accumulate for themselves. And he writes in his book, not since Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan has there been such a concentration of wealth and power, and the enormous, unprecedented fortunes created by the digital revolution have done much to increase equality, or inequality rather, in America, as it has in the world as a whole. But of course, in this technological age, the power that these internet giants now have over the information from which people get their perceptions is something the world has never seen before. And it's gathering its further concentration every day. And so Wikipedia is a major contributor to this control of information, which leads to people's perceptions. And again, look at the concentration of power, not just in terms of corporations, but in terms of people. As I keep emphasizing, the number of people who are dictating what you see is getting smaller and smaller all the time, and it is already minute. At Facebook, you've got control of that, at least officially, by Mark Zuckerberg and by Sheryl Sandberg, the chief operating officer. At Google, you've got control of what that does by Sergey Brin and Larry Page, who run the Alphabet parent company that owns Google and also owns YouTube. YouTube has a CEO called Susan Wojcicki. And you then add Wikipedia to that, and you're looking at an extraordinary concentration of power over the flow of information and what people feel is factually accurate, what is happening in the world, what people are, what their background is, what their views are. And there's another little thing, is that every single person that I have just named, and you can add Jimmy Wales at Wikipedia to that list, is a vehement Zionist supporter of Israel. And then, as I've mentioned, they are employing ultra-Zionist hate groups, both sides of the Atlantic, to, quote, advise them on what is censored and what isn't. Now, that is a fact. Those are facts that I've just highlighted. But even so, when you say that, you're called anti-Semitic. When it's not about targeting or labeling an entire group of people with the actions of the few, it's quite the opposite. It's pointing out the actions of the few and the concentration of power that they have over what you see. But people are intimidated into not mentioning these blatant facts. Take you 5 minutes to confirm it's true, because they fear being labelled anti-Semitic or racist or a Holocaust denier. But unless we refuse to be intimidated and continue to work on facts, then this concentration of power will just go on unchallenged. And it mustn't, because the implications for human freedom are absolutely fantastic. You know, there's something in the living room, and it's sitting on the sofa, and it's got a tail, it's got a massive body, it's got a big trunk. And it's time to have the backbone to deal in facts and point out the concentration of power over information that we're seeing, gathering pace hour by hour. Because the alternative to addressing this is unthinkable. And that unthinkable world is not too far in the future if we go on ignoring it. We need to stop being intimidated into silence and avoiding our eyes when the elephant comes into view. Some of us will not be intimidated. Not now, not ever, because we need to look at these facts and just consider the implications for human freedom of this going on.